A mermaid comes to New York City looking for love from a man who struggles with commitment. Join us as we chat about digitally hiding a butt crack, 80s men who can't say I love you, and the worst sport to play while smoking. Then we find out if Splash stands the test of time.
Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? James says gladiator with a glut, and Alan says as a father blah blah. It's the test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 401 of the Test of Time podcast. I'm James Brief, and here to make a big splash with his 401st episode that he's going to be directing is my buddy and pal, the co-host of this podcast, Alan Noah.
Hi, I see what you did there. I like it. We will splash around with our big mermaid tales, I guess, for this episode. How you doing, James?
I'm doing very, very well. It's always fun to watch a film that I'd never seen before. But before we do that, I want to talk about the state of streaming and what you've been doing lately, because I canceled Netflix.
You did it.
I did. I canceled Netflix. I don't miss it at all. I find that I'm barely watching Hulu. I like YouTube a lot.
Okay.
I watch all these random things, whether it's yesterday's Stephen Colbert monologue or documentary on the making of Super Mario Brothers 3, or whatever, something on the astrophysics, the latest black hole discoveries. That's fun. I like Max, and Paramount Plus actually has been a surprise. That has a lot of good content. Disney Plus is, I would say it's I use it enough, but I've talked about before that I'm not as excited about Star Wars, and Marvel has done the same thing to me. I'm just not that as intrigued about all that extra content. I don't have kids, so the cartoony Disney stuff doesn't really appeal to me. And I do not have cable television, so I've not had that for probably a good 5 or 6 years now. What about you? What do you subscribe to these days?
I have all of them. I don't know that we necessarily need all of them, but we do really go back and forth between a lot of these different streamers where at any given moment, Courtney and I are watching something on Max. As a family, we're all watching Lost, which is on Hulu, and my daughter likes some shows on Netflix, and Eli's always got something on Prime that he's watching. Like, we really are all over the place, and we do watch all of the different things. I do kind of like just having access to all of them. I find myself really getting annoyed with Paramount Plus, not because of the content that's on there. That's fine, but I feel like the app is always crashing. It never lets me download things onto my tablet, like when we're traveling, even though I have the deluxe ultra plan where I'm supposed to be able to download stuff, so that pisses me off. We have the Peacock Plus plan, which means that you still have ads. In order to get rid of the ads, you need to have like the Peacock Plus Ultra Deluxe Super Duper Premium or something. It's like the car wash names where, it's just more and more adjectives as you go along.
But everything is plus, premium, super plus. So
yeah. And I still have cable, which I use it for Super Bowl and live sports and things like that. Also for Saturday Night Live, because I don't have the ultra premium Peacock. If I watch the new SNL on Peacock, I have to watch the ads, but if I watch it on cable, I can fast forward.
Well, instead of paying $45 a month for cable, every single thing that you just said you like live TV for, you could get with a $17 digital antenna from Amazon. That's what I have. I don't have cable, so I watch all of the live TV, Super Bowl, NBC, ABC, plus dozens, if not hundreds, of all these weird channels that are just being broadcast on digital. Old movies, old game shows, 80s sitcoms are just randomly between between the CBS channels, and it's fantastic. I really suggest it. And also, if you ever have one of these like Secret Santas that you got to buy a present for someone under $20, great present for somebody.
Oh, that's a good idea. We did do a Secret Santa for work, and I bought gloves that you can use on a touch screen, and that was actually a pretty popular gift.
I've had those. Those are actually pretty good when they work.
Yeah. But let's talk about a movie that I watched on Disney Plus, Splash. I saw that the movie was celebrating its 40th anniversary, and I hadn't seen it in ages, so I thought it would be a good excuse, or as good excuse as any, to watch it for the podcast. And for anyone who hasn't seen Splash, it's a movie about a guy named Alan. So I like that. And he has a chance encounter with a beautiful mermaid when he's a child. Decades later, Alan nearly drowns, and the mermaid saves his life. She finds him in New York City with her tail replaced by human legs. They only have 6 days together before she must return to the sea, and they quickly fall in love. The mermaid assumes the human name of Madison, and she gradually decides to tell Alan her secret. But a scientist named Kornbluth knows the truth, and he's able to reveal Madison's true nature. Alan is at first horrified, but he soon realizes that he loves Madison no matter what, and the two of them swim off to live happily ever after. So this movie was a big hit when it came out 40 years ago, right, James?
Oh, yeah. This film came out on March 9th, 1984. It opened at number 1 with $6.1 million. I saw it somewhere in the low double digits, $10 to $15 million budget. And the film was in the top 10 for 10 weeks. It wound up grossing $69 million domestically. Weirdly, though, I had never seen this film before. And while I've heard references to it, I don't think this film really, continued on the zeitgeist. And it was actually the number 11 film of the year. But when you look at 1984 hits, most of these films we've either done or will do, but most of these films people are still talking about today. Listen to these films from 1984. Actually, can you make a guess when the number one film 1984? And I will tell you Return of the Jedi was 83.
You don't need to tell me when Return of the Jedi came out, James. I know that it came out in 83. 84, was that Temple of Doom?
No, Temple of Doom was number 2.
Okay.
This is a film, we reviewed this film on the 2nd episode of our podcast.
Ghostbusters.
Right. So Ghostbusters, number 1 film. Then Indiana Jones, both those films still talked about today. Gremlins, still talked about today. The Karate Kid. Literally, it's probably the only reason I might buy Netflix again for a month when that final season comes out of Cobra Kai. Number 5, a film talked about today, but still not in the zeitgeist. They've been trying to remake this one for years. Police Academy. Mm-hmm. Number 6, we reviewed this film. They remade it a couple years ago, Footloose. Mm-hmm. Then another one, remake it again, and listeners look forward to we'll be reviewing this film, probably at least one, if not both of the sequels. Beverly Hills Cop. Then number 8, Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. No comment, Al. Number 9, Terms of Endearment. I'm sure we're gonna watch it at one point. All I know about that film is that it makes you cry.
Okay.
And then number 10 is Romancing the Stone. We are definitely gonna do that film because that's a big Kirk Douglas film. And number 11 being Splash. So, those top 10 films, most of those are really, really talked about today. And it's just strange that Tom Hanks, you got Ron Howard, Brian Grazer, the producer, Daryl Hannah, John Candy's in this film, sure. Eugene Levy, who, it didn't make it big, I would say, until, that guy from American Pie.
I hear what you're saying. There was talks about a remake of Splash that was more going to be from the mermaid's point of view, and it's just been in development hell for years. I don't know if there's a real appetite for it. Splash was in the news, I think, like in the early days of Disney Plus, when someone figured out that Disney Plus had altered the scene where you see her butt. They made Daryl Hannah's hair longer, so it covered like her butt crack. And then it was a thing on Twitter of like, Disney's censoring the butt crack. Come on, who cares? And now when you look at some of the stuff that's on Disney Plus, just a handful of years later, there are hard R movies on Disney Plus now. Deadpool's on Disney Plus.
Yeah, I saw this film on Disney Plus, and I think you see a boob.
Yes, you do see her bare breasts and you do see the butt crack. Disney later undid the digital hair longening. That's not a word. But they undid it.
Yeah, I think that was smart of them to do because, Disney, yes, it's family friendly, but that's why Disney had like the Touchstone label years ago and Buena Vista Entertainment so that they could have, a little bit more adult fare. And, if you want to have that library on Disney Plus, you're either going to put it or you don't.
This movie, Splash, was the very first movie to be released under the Touchstone label.
Huh, interesting, because that would make sense because, when you don't quite want to call this Walt Disney Presents Daryl Hannah's boob and butt,
right?
Disney's entire brand is the word Disney. It means quality, or it connotates family friendly, or, somewhat safe.
Right. I mean, this movie is, I think, fairly PG and, not terribly adult. Although the John Candy character, even the little boy version of him in the first scene of the movie, he's like throwing change on the ground and then looking up women's skirts. So that is definitely more risque than your typical Disney movie. Also, when he's an adult, he's talking about writing a letter to the Penthouse Forum. So I guess that would be kind of an awkward conversation for a parent and a little kid, maybe.
Yeah, and I was going to make the criticism that it kind of has the like lovable womanizer character that used to be somewhat popular. I barely remember Three's Company, but I think his buddy Larry, like they would always go to the Regal Beagle and pick up women. It was kind of a positive thing. Oh, look at him, that dastardly handsome womanizer there.
Right.
John Candy's character, yes, in the beginning, it's definitely a comedic thing, and they play it up. However, later, John Candy, and in his classic, Candy can just switch it on a dime from his like, oh, gee shucks, it's funny John Candy, to the wow, he's incredibly serious, John Candy. Gives him that, like, you think my life is fun? You think I like doing what I'm doing? Oh, no, this sucks. You actually love this woman, you gotta go for it. Like, I like that they gave that, because I don't think in the 80s people would have necessarily seen John Candy's character as anything but kind of a slapstick comic relief guy. And to the film's credit, and even to the character's credit, he actually realizes this flaw in his own character and says, even though I'm happy-go-lucky, I kind of suck too.
Right. And John Candy is great in this movie, and that's not surprising. That's not a hot take. But speaking of character flaws, Alan's character flaw kind of irked me a bit, because he's a commitment phobe, but kind of, right? Because he has a long-term relationship in the beginning, and then she dumps him because he's unable to say, I love you, which makes me think of Always, which we just talked about with Courtney a few weeks ago. But then he immediately gets super depressed that he can't have this great love. And then all he wants is this great love. And it's like, well, which is it? I felt like his character went back and forth between, I need a girlfriend, I don't want a girlfriend, I need to have someone that I can grow old with, but I can't say that I love you, and then he can say that I love you, but then he doesn't want to. Like, I just felt like he was going back and forth with his one defining personality trait. I felt like it wasn't a clear arc.
I noticed it, not the way you picked it up. I like the way you said it, but I noticed when he was having trouble saying I love you, and similar to Always, it also made me think of a film that we haven't reviewed that we will get around to it, Ghost, when Patrick Swayze's character, he famously never says I love you. Whenever Demi Moore says I love you, he will just say ditto. But the whole 80s thing of the guy won't say it. Was that an 80s thing? I don't know.
I mean, when I was alive in the 80s, I said I love you to people. Granted, I was a little kid and I was adorable and I was saying it to my parents, but that still counts, right?
Yeah, I know, but I just feel like today, if it was the awkward, oh no, she or he said I love you and I didn't get it back, that's very relatable. That could be a man or woman, a gay relationship, it doesn't matter. But it just seems like it's a weird 80s thing that guys couldn't say I love you back to their girls.
Right. Another kind of 80s trope is the quote unquote villain trying to expose some secret, failing repeatedly, and then getting hurt. And I can't think of other examples, but like Eugene Levy in this movie, he knows that she's a mermaid and he's going to prove it, damn it. And he's going to prove it by throwing water on her, and then her tail will grow. And that does ultimately work. But before he does it successfully, he throws water on this random woman, and then the husband breaks his arm. Then he does it again with a fire hose, and it's the same couple. And then the husband's really mad. And like, I don't find that funny. Eugene Levy, I find very funny. But like, just that as a bit, I think is not funny. And I feel like that's an 80s thing, even though I can't think of other examples where similar things happened.
One thing that does remind me of Eric Idle's character in one of the Vacation films. I don't know where this randomly came from, but maybe European Vacation. Me and my brother and sister used to watch that film all the time as a kid. I haven't seen it in 30 years.
Okay.
But I believe Eric Idle's character keeps getting injured by the Griswolds over and over and over.
Okay.
And I remember it not being funny when I was a kid.
I do like the Eugene Levy's character turn at the end, where he goes from being the villain to wanting to help out because he finds out that they're going to dissect the mermaid, and that's not what he wanted. He wanted to save his good name, and he got a little too carried away. I kind of appreciated that. I like him as a guy that I can root for, not that I'm enjoying watching him get hurt.
Well, also, there is somewhat of a logic to what he's saying. He thinks there's a fucking mermaid, another species is on the island of Manhattan. That's a big deal to, expose is the wrong word. Does she have the right to privacy or whatnot? But he has a logical idea of doing it. Look, people have a right to find out that there's mermaids in the world, but like, we don't have a right to kill her.
Right.
And that's when he's going to take her. And then, again, logically, if you're a marine biologist, you seemingly care for marine life.
Right.
Or you don't have to be a marine biologist to not want her to die.
Sure.
So, you get that whole E.T. thing where the government's just going to cut her open in the end. So I did like his turn.
Yeah.
And something else that stands the test of time, I'll say, you really have to go back to 1984 and realize the star of this film, Tom Hanks. We take it for granted today because he's the A-list of A-list. I mean, he's our generation's Marlon Brando of like, he could headline a film and just his name alone has that gravitas. Meryl Streep, Tom Hanks, there's very few people that can get that kind of attention. I think that all started with Philadelphia. Tom Hanks was almost completely a comedic actor in the 80s. He starred in one of the most notoriously bad television shows of all time, Bosom Buddies. And Tom Hanks was not the number one guy for this role. It was offered to Chevy Chase, Michael Keaton, Bill Murray, John Travolta, Dudley Moore, Jeff Bridges, Richard Gere, Kevin Kline, Burt Reynolds, Robin Williams, Christopher Reeve. These were all people that were considered for this role. And it's a very easy role to pass on. It's a little bit out there.
Yeah. And Tom Hanks knew Ron Howard because apparently he was on Happy Days as a kid. And so that's kind of like the connection that led to him being cast.
Yeah, I wonder if this was even Ron Howard's first film.
This is low on his IMDb page, but I don't believe this is his first movie.
Off the top of my head, I think this is the 5th Ron Howard directed film that we've reviewed. Can you name all 5 that I could think of right now? So this is one of them, Splash.
Right. Willow.
2.
Parenthood.
3.
Apollo 13.
Correct.
The Paper.
Oh, that's 5. I did not remember that one.
Okay.
So there's one more. I can give a very easy hint.
Okay.
It's about senior citizens.
Oh, Cocoon.
Yeah.
Right.
6 films. It's probably the number one director. Spielberg.
Spielberg, yeah. This is neither here nor there, but it takes place in Manhattan, and people just keep bumping into each other. Like this island of millions of people. Eugene Levy, he finds Alan just by going to Manhattan. He instantly finds his apartment. How? How the fuck does he know where he is? it kind of makes sense how the cops find Alan after they find Madison because she has his license. So they are police. They would be able to track him down. They call him at work or something and they find him. Fine. But then Kornbluth, the Eugene Levy character, he comes to New York looking for the mermaid and he just finds them instantly. And then later in the movie, they have a big fight, Alan and Madison. And then Madison finds Alan. He's just like in some random street alleyway crying or whatever, and she comes over and accepts his marriage proposal. How the fuck does she find him? Like, this shit bothers me, and I know you're not supposed to think about that, especially in a movie where there's a mermaid who can be human, but it pisses me off. It's a big fucking city.
I agree with you there, but I will say other things in films, like when someone knocks on someone's door in a New York City apartment, I'm like, how the fuck did they get buzzed up? Like,
right.
That can't happen.
Speaking of New York City buildings, towards the end of the movie, Alan goes home after he's released from the government facility where they're working on Madison, and he walks into his building, and then a million reporters swarm out of the lobby. I'm like, there's a doorman. We see the doorman. He's a character in the movie. He has a couple of lines. What the fuck kind of doorman is this? He lets a million reporters into the lobby? Like, he should kick them out, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is private property, so they couldn't possibly be in there unless the doorman allowed them.
Right. I mean, that's like doorman 101. You don't let in a million reporters to harass one of your tenants.
Definitely something for people in the New York metropolitan area. You remember Crazy Eddie, right?
Oh, of course, yeah.
So Crazy Eddie was this guy. He had, I don't know, a dozen or so electronic stores, the equivalent of like a Best Buy today. He would go, oh, come to Crazy Eddie where the prices are insane. Yeah. This television only $199 and this thing only $299. Apparently, the whole story, a big fraud, and he it was like abroad. He was caught by, he fled internationally, and it was a whole thing. This is a real New York thing he put on there. I thought that was cool.
Right. Speaking of New York City things, after Alan has his meltdown after his girlfriend dumps him, he jumps in a taxi to Cape Cod, Massachusetts. And the guy's like, hey, you better have money. I don't believe that any New York City taxi driver would take you to Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Maybe if you offered him thousands and thousands of dollars in cash, but that's not a thing. No one's going to drive you from New York City to fucking Cape Cod.
There's no credit card readers in taxis. Who's going to have hundreds of dollars in cash, in your wallet? Remember, this is the 80s when everyone's mugging you in the cities. So, I don't think you'd walk around with $400 worth of cash in your wallet.
Right. I mean, I guess Alan is a successful produce importer or something. He works at the docks and he has produce brought to him from other places on boats because he likes boats, but he can't swim because, of course. I read a thing that apparently he was supposed to be a very Jewish character who was a lox importer in an early version of the script. And then the note came back from the studio that it was too Jewish. I forget what the character's first name was, but they made it Alan, which is Jewish, said by a Jewish Alan, but not as Jewy as whatever the first version was. And instead of importing lox, it was produce.
I think that's probably a good thing to get rid of. Apparently, one of the jokes in this film is that Daryl Hannah's character, the mermaid, she has no name, or certainly no name that she could pronounce in English.
Right. It's
so. Right. So they pass by Madison Avenue, and she goes, "Call me Madison." It's almost like passing Lexington Avenue. Call me Lexington, or call me Park Avenue.
Right.
It would be a weird name to do, but today, of course, Madison's a pretty popular name for a woman, and I'll tell you, as a pediatrician, I definitely see it. And I read that this film is credited with popularizing that name.
Yes.
So the joke is completely lost on us because it would be like saying, "Let's call this boy Connor." What a stupid name! Connor's such a popular name today.
Right. When she says, "I want to be named Madison," Alan says, "That's not a name." And that line really doesn't stand the test of time because I know several Madisons. I have a Madison in my family. It's a very fucking popular name.
Another guy who recently made the news because there was sort of a movie biopic of him, Richard Simmons. Remember that guy?
Of course I remember him. The news is that he doesn't want there to be a biopic.
Yeah, but then I heard that he watched it and gave his blessing to Pauly Shore or something.
No, there is no biopic. Pauly Shore wants there to be a biopic, and he wants to play Richard Simmons, and Richard Simmons has gone into the media saying, I don't want there to be a biopic of me. Pauly Shore, leave me alone. I don't want to have anything to do with this. Just get the fuck off my case.
Oh, okay. I think that's the whole thing with Richard Simmons, that he's been out of the media for years. Apparently, it seems like he's just like, I'm not a public figure anymore. But what a great 80s reference, Richard Simmons.
Right. And so Madison is watching TV in Bloomingdale's, and she sees Crazy Eddie and she sees Richard Simmons, and she learns how to speak English in just a couple of hours, because before that she is completely mute. She does not speak English, which I guess makes sense if she's lived her entire life in the ocean. But then she just learns how to speak English from watching TV in a couple of hours. She is fluent in English. She knows all the big words. She knows lots of different phrases and idioms. And it's like, come on. At one point, Alan even says, like, that's incredible. She's so smart that she learned English from just watching TV. And yeah, I kind of appreciate that he acknowledged that. But even in a movie where she's a fucking mermaid who is walking around New York City, I'm like, that's just stupid. Like, that stretches even that level of credibility.
There are a few things in this film that I actually had the comment of saying, all right, this is one of these films where you just don't question it. And that's one of these quote unquote powers, I guess, that she has, that sort of like she's able to kiss you and that you can breathe underwater. Sure. I'll say that this is actually not the first character in a film, not from this year, but actually a film from 1985, where a character learned English by watching American television. Can you name the second character? This is a little bit obscure.
I have no idea.
So in the 1985 John Cusack film, Better Off Dead.
Oh, right.
One of the Asian guys that drives alongside Lane.
Yeah.
He learned English by watching Howard Cosell in The Wide World of Sports.
Right.
So he talks Lane Myers, an awesome spectacle.
Yeah.
And that joke kind of takes into the part that, he's really speaking like the guy he's mimicking. And I thought they were going to take that joke. And there's one reference where Madison says something like, and we'll win all these fabulous prizes, like something, the game show host would say. But I thought it would have been funny for her to at least maybe mimic one of the like famous accents, where's the beef, or just something. It wouldn't stand the test of time because people wouldn't know what it's referencing. But I thought there was a good joke in there that they don't really capitalize on.
Yeah, and to be fair, people do learn English from watching television. That's a real thing. Courtney had a roommate who is from Spain, and he learned a lot of English by watching Futurama and South Park and The Simpsons. But it takes time. It does not happen in an afternoon. That is the part that bothers me. Not that television taught her English. Like, that is perfectly fine and valid.
Yeah, but this is also a film with a mermaid. And
right.
Again, that she could touch you and you could breathe. So, sure, mermaids also have the power of intense language ability.
Sure. Fine. And a thing that does a little bit bother me about this movie, and I've complained about it in numerous other episodes, is the love story feels like, how are these people in love? Like, I get that they're attracted to each other. I get the lust aspect of it. But love? Really? They barely know each other. At first, when they meet, they're just having sex because she doesn't speak at all, which is a male fantasy that this beautiful woman appears and just wants to have sex with you. Sounds great. And then she learns to talk and they fall in love. I do think the movie a little bit gets a pass on that because of the prologue where they met as little kids. To me, that kind of makes it more of like a fairy tale where these two are destined to be together. So the fact that the love story is a little thin for most of the movie, I kind of feel like you can a little bit yada yada that away of like, fairy tale, destiny, magic, whatever.
I thought that was a mistake of this film, that Tom Hanks' character Alan, he doesn't realize that Daryl Hannah is that mermaid from his childhood until like 3/4 of the way through the film. And
No, it's even more than that. It's at like the very end.
yeah, it might be very far in, and he should have been questioning, like, nah, it can't be her, because she instantly sees that it was him. And once again, just like the little boy in Big, I thought they really cast a young Tom Hanks very well. I thought he did resemble Tom Hanks. So when she looked at him, yeah, this does look like a grown version of that boy I met. I thought that would have made a lot more sense. And we're, wondering, how are you so into this girl so quickly? And he could say, she reminds me of someone. Who? Never mind. Like little references that we could later realize, oh, okay, he was talking about her. I thought that was obvious to me, because the only thing I knew about this film was that it's Tom Hanks and I think Daryl Hannah's a mermaid. So
Right.
when I saw this thing in the beginning, I'm like, okay, this is Tom Hanks and this blonde girl is the future Daryl Hannah. I got that immediately. But
Right.
they do not reference the beginning of this film until the very end of the film, which I thought, no, there's like one or two little references to, like, he used to go out as a kid and stuff, but why have that prologue? The prologue is almost unnecessary to the entire film. You could have just had it where this guy falls overboard and, a mermaid saves him, kind of Little Mermaid style.
I hear what you're saying. I think it does serve a purpose. There's also the fact that he clearly likes mermaids, and there's this statue that he loves, and he always loved this mermaid statue. He doesn't really know why, but he does know why, and we know why, but he can't verbalize it. And then also she like gets that statue into his fucking apartment. Speaking of like New York City apartment rules, I'm pretty sure someone would have an issue if you tried to bring that kind of a fucking statue into a building on the elevator.
I don't know. You give the guy $50. I don't think he cares.
All right, fine. One other test of time thing that really leapt out at me was there are several lines about them getting married and needing to get a blood test first. I Googled it earlier because I was just curious. I'm like, did that used to be a thing? And it did, in fact, used to be a thing, that they were trying to curb syphilis, I guess. So that was the point of the blood test. And eventually, at a certain point, some states stopped it, and then more states, and now apparently no states require it. Some states encourage it for STDs, STIs, other genetic abnormalities. You should get a blood test before you have children with someone, but it is not a requirement that you have to do before getting married. But yeah, it's a line in the movie that you need a blood test to get married in New York, but not in Maryland in 1984, which all of that just kind of blew my mind.
Yeah, that was a good one. I was wondering if it had something to do with AIDS, but I was like, nah, this is too early for
Yeah,
AIDS.
not in 84.
I don't even think they had the term AIDS back then.
No.
Another great 80s thing, yeah, it's still around, but racquetball.
Yeah.
That is such an 80s thing. They're always showing like big shots in New York City playing it. And not only are they playing racquetball, but what is the other 80s test of time thing that John Candy's character is doing while they're playing racquetball?
Yeah, I mean, he's smoking, and not even just smoking like in between sets of racquetball games. I don't even know what the terminology is, but he's like got the cigarette in his mouth while running back and forth, which can't help your game.
Well, I mean, racquetball is in an enclosed box. Like,
Right.
it's a glass box, pretty much. And, there's all that smoke. You're running around incredibly fast. Like, ashes are going to go everywhere. I mean, it just seems like one of the worst. I could see someone kind of comedically playing left field, baseball, and it kind of has a cigarette, because what are the odds you're getting a hit to you? But, racquetball seems like one of the worst ones. But it's such an 80s thing that I don't think anyone thought that was comedic. I just thought it was more of like, oh, it's John Candy, the womanizer, and he smokes and drinks and he always has sex with women.
Maybe that it was hanging out of his mouth was a laugh, and then he goes to grab a beer while they're playing, and then he does do the slapsticky thing where he hits the ball and it immediately ricochets and hits him on the head and he falls down.
Right, and John Candy is a bigger guy, so I think maybe they were going a little bit of that. I had no idea John Candy was in this film, and Oh God, I miss that guy. I mean, he was such a gem, and this was just such an 80s John Candy role.
Yeah, yeah. About the end of the movie, this is kind of a Manhattan geography thing, so forgive me if this is boring for listeners who don't know the layout of the island of Manhattan. But the research lab where they're working on Madison, it's in the Museum of Natural History, which is on the west side of Manhattan. And to get to the water to free her, Alan drives all the way downtown to like the southern tip of Manhattan when he could just go a couple avenues west and bring her to the water.
I did notice that. I was kind of wondering, is there some reason it has to go there? Like, that's how they can get the port in? Or I thought they were going to throw some throwaway line about it, but no, they didn't.
I think it's just so they could have like a car chase scene and see more of the city, I guess. And then if she's all the way down at the South Shore, it's easier for her to get to the sea. But if she's a mermaid, then it shouldn't really matter. She could go from the Upper West Side and it'll be fine.
Yeah, and it's interesting, the end of the film, actually, the real ending of the film, you have to watch the credits to really see how this film ends.
Yeah.
But I thought the ending was going to be the same ending as Cocoon. The ending of Cocoon is basically the aliens are going to take most of the people up in their ship and all these powers they're going to get and everything. And they offer it to a couple of the older people and Steve Guttenberg's character. And a couple of people say, no, I want to stay on Earth with my loved ones and blah, blah, blah. And I feel like that's what they're setting up because Madison says to Alan, she says, come with me and you can go and, I can kiss you and you can swim underwater. And he's like, yeah, great. And I'll come visit Freddie every Christmas or whatever. And she goes, no, if you come with me, you can never come back. Same thing like Cocoon. Like, if you go to the aliens, yeah, you'll live forever, but no, you're never coming back here. And Tom Hanks says, no, like, I can. And I thought that was very sweet, like his brother and like, oh, can't you like stick your head out of the water every Christmas or something? At least that, to see him. But he says no, but then at the end he goes, yes, I will go back. And he does go back in the water with Madison, and he turns into a merman. Well, you don't see them turning into a merman, but he can swim underwater, and she leads him to what appears at the very end of the credits to be like a mermaid city underwater.
Yeah. I had in my notes, is that Atlantis? ? They don't say that, but apparently there is this whole under the sea world. So cool. I guess he can make new friends, and even though he won't be with his brother anymore. Yeah, that was kind of a strange left turn. I mean, it's also consistent. Like if in this universe there are mermaids, well, there's probably more than just Madison, right? There's got to be others like her. But I was surprised that when I saw that undersea village, city, whatever the fuck it is. I wasn't expecting that. Apparently, also, the movie did not have that ending. In the original script, Alan just says goodbye to her, and she goes off and lives under the sea without him. But apparently, I think it was Ron Howard's wife and Babalu Mandel wrote or co-wrote the screenplay. His wife was very insistent that it needs to be a happy ending where they live happily ever after, and they pressured their husbands to make the ending that.
I kind of agree with the ending they do here. I think it's very sweet that he wants to stay with his brother, but his brother Freddie doesn't need him. It's not like one of those things. But I think this is the right decision because in this case, he is sad. His character's very sad. He doesn't have anyone. He does love his brother, but I think he needs true love.
Aww. Well, James, on that note, I will ask you what you think about the movie Splash and if you think it stands the test of time.
It's a movie about a mermaid, and just that alone, obviously, you can't ask many questions. But there were a couple smash cuts that didn't really make sense. There's a part early on when Daryl Hannah, who she appears naked at the Statue of Liberty, and she's arrested and brought in. You referred earlier that that's how Alan is brought into the police station because she's holding his wallet. And they're like, you know this woman? What's her name? And he goes, I don't know her name. She doesn't have any ID. She's naked. And the next thing you know, the two of them are walking on the streets of New York. how did they release her? He can't even produce her name, and they're going to release this woman into his custody. That's weird. She can't speak.
Right.
Another one later is when they're in Bloomingdale's, and she speaks her name, and she goes, "Ay, ay, ay, ay," and like breaks every television in Bloomingdale's and every window. And then the next scene is like them just walking. Like, you don't get to just leave, or there's some weird explanation of how the fuck did this just happen. You look at these things that you can't think about too much. Tom Hanks is, we'd only learn later how wonderful he is, but he really is wonderful in this film. This would not have been a good Chevy Chase film. Bill Murray would have played this different.
Sure.
I like the fact that Tom Hanks is never seen as like, Daryl Hannah is out of his league, and Tom Hanks is, he's not ugly, but he's an everyday, he's an everyman kind of thing. And John Travolta, he's a very handsome man. Michael Keaton, an 80s Michael Keaton, that's interesting because I think they probably could have played it pretty similar, but I think that there was a lot of chemistry here. Daryl Hannah she has a very difficult role in this film because the first half of this film, she doesn't speak a word. And I think she does a great job not speaking and conveying her emotions and what she's trying to say. But I thought this film was cute. Did I love it? No. I would say that I'm surprised that I thought that this film does stand the test of time. I think if any of the principal cast or crew were replaced, I think any of them would have made this possibly a much weaker film. A different director, a different actor. Even if you replaced the different actors, you had to have the right chemistry there. And John Candy and Eugene Levy and their smaller roles are just so great there that for me, it's a solid film. It's not great. Do I have to see it again? No, but would I see it again? Yeah, I think I would. Not for a little bit, but this is a film I never would have seen, and I'm glad I did. So for me, it stands the test of time. It's a cute little film, and I'm interested to hear what you think, Al. Splash, 1984. Does it stand the test of time in 2024?
All right, well, before I answer that, there was one other thing I wanted to mention. I forgot. I'm going to say it now. Do you know what this movie's tagline was?
No.
You can't guess it. I'll read it to you. This was what was on the poster. 2 days ago, this girl showed up naked at the Statue of Liberty. For Alan Bauer, it was love at first sight. Now everyone is chasing her, trying to prove she's a mermaid. From the first laugh, you will be hooked. That is 4 sentences. That's way too fucking long.
That's not even true.
What?
Everyone is trying to prove that she's a mermaid? No, exactly one person is trying to prove that she's a mermaid.
Valid point. Also, I appreciate the pun of you'll be hooked, but Jesus fucking Christ, that is the shittiest tagline ever when the most brilliant tagline was right there staring him in the fucking face. It's a fish out of water love story. That's it. It's about a mermaid. Fish out of water. Come on. It's as fucking simple as can be. And also, that's a tagline that's, a couple of words, not 4 fucking sentences. Hire me, Touchstone Pictures in 1984. I mean, I'm only 5 years old at the time, but still, I think I could have come up with a better tagline. I agree with you that what makes this movie work is Tom Hanks, Daryl Hannah, John Candy, Eugene Levy. They are great. They are charming. I love watching them. I don't think the movie stands the test of time as a whole, though, because it just feels weak. It just feels, It feels like you would need more. If you wanted to make a movie like this today, you could, sure, but I think you would have to do more of Madison's point of view, which is what they were talking about in the potential remake that Brian Grazer was saying that he was going to make for the past 10 years. It's fine that Alan is the protagonist. I love that he's an Alan. Also, it's not very clear how that Alan is spelled, if it's A-L-A-N or A-L-L-E-N. In certain things, it's both ways, but whatever. Madison, to me, is a really fascinating character. Like, she spends her whole life in the ocean. She has this one chance encounter with a little boy, and then decades later, she sees him again, and she wants to be with him, but she's also afraid about abandoning her fish form permanently. Like, there's more to her story that's just not told. And it's sacrificed to get more of Alan's story, which I don't think is interesting at all, that he's afraid of commitment, but he wants a girlfriend, but he can't say I love you, but he needs to say I love you. That story is just not that interesting to me, and it doesn't really go anywhere. And I feel like Madison's got a really fascinating story that we just don't get. I think a lot of the John Candy slapstick, while it's funny because it's John Candy and I love him, I don't think it really works. I think it's dated. I think all the Eugene Levy stuff is dated, where he just keeps getting his arm broke, guffaw, guffaw. We didn't even talk about the whole thing where he's basically mistaken for a presidential assassin because Alan and Freddie are invited to this dinner with the president, and that's where Eugene Levy is going to expose Madison. The Secret Service thinks he's trying to assassinate the president because he's got this big tank on his back. Like, that's not funny. I don't know how funny it was in 1984. Was there 1 or 2 assassination attempts at Reagan? I mean, like, is this funny? I don't know. It just felt out of place. So I don't think this movie stands the test of time. It's charming. It's worth seeing if you're bored on Disney Plus because that's the streaming service you have and you're looking for something. Sure, there's worse stuff out there, but I don't think it stands the test of time.
That's fair. A couple years later from this film, the assassination attempts on Queen Elizabeth in 2 scenes were 2 of the funniest scenes in The Naked Gun. So you can make assassination attempts hysterical.
Yeah, but for an American audience, it's funnier if it's a leader of a different country.
True. That's fair. And what you're saying about a film from Madison's point of view, that's fair. And that actually is a very interesting point of view. It's basically The Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
I think that this film, from Alan's point of view, is perfectly fair as well. I mean, you meet a mermaid. I mean, what do you do? I don't think that his driving conflict of the commitment phobe is really, I never really found that to be an interesting driving force.
Yeah.
But it's the charm of Tom Hanks that makes it just worth it.
Yeah, I hear ya. Well, that's going to do it for us this week. Next week, we're going to be talking about Do the Right Thing with special guest Eddie Perez Cortez. I've never seen Do the Right Thing. I'm embarrassed to admit it.
Is this going to be the first Spike Lee film that you're going to watch?
Yeah, I think so.
No, it isn't.
It isn't?
No, it's the first Spike Lee joint.
Oh, right. Yeah. It'll be my first Spike Lee joint. It'll be our first Spike Lee joint on the podcast.
On the podcast, that's right.
Stay tuned for that episode. Don't miss it. Make sure you're subscribed on whatever podcast app you listen to us on. And you can write to us at Testing Time Pod on Facebook, X, Instagram, or Threads. And we'll see you next time, everybody.
See you next week.